Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. My name is Philip. I went through a marriage that slowly crumbled over time. After months of tension and emotional distance, I eventually discovered that my wife had been unfaithful. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. Instead, she became defensive, told me to leave, and reminded me that the house we lived in had been a gift from her parents. I didn't argue or fight back. I simply walked out. What she never expected was what happened next. I met Angela during a season when my life felt completely uncertain. I had just stepped into the corporate world after finishing school, still figuring out how everything worked. My pay was modest, and my career wasn't advancing as quickly as I had hoped, but I showed up every single day and worked hard. Angela entered my life during that period. It began with small, casual conversations about shared interests, the kind of talks that make you feel seen. She was genuinely interested in me, not just in what I did for work. I found myself looking forward to hearing her voice at the end of long work days. After a few months of talking, we started dating. It wasn't casual for me. I loved her. I didn't say it out loud right away, but I knew it early on. She brought a calmness to my life that I hadn't even realized I was missing. The future was still uncertain, but being with her made everything feel more grounded. Because of that, I was willing to give her everything I had, every effort, every gesture, just to make her feel valued. 3 years into our relationship, we got married, surrounded by family and friends. We stood together and promised to build a life side by side. We didn't have everything figured out, but we had each other, and that felt like enough. Right after the ceremony, Angela's parents pulled us aside. Her father handed her a small envelope with a key inside, smiling as he said, "This is your new beginning." At first, I didn't fully understand. Later, I learned that they had built a house and gifted it to her as a wedding present. Fully paid off, no strings attached. I was stunned. At that time, Angela and I were still renting a small apartment, so this gift completely changed the course of our lives. It meant we could start our marriage without rent or mortgage payments weighing us down. I didn't care that the house was technically hers. We were a team, building a future together. Those first months in that house were some of the most peaceful we ever had. There was balance, love, and hope. I remember thinking, this is what marriage is supposed to feel like. That house felt like the foundation of everything we were dreaming of together. But years later, it would become the very thing used against me. Our marriage didn't collapse overnight. It eroded slowly. Over time, I began to notice changes in Angela's attitude. I was driven in my career, yes, but I always tried to make time for the people I loved. That mattered to me. At some point, Angela matched and even surpassed my career energy. I respected that. She was smart, ambitious, and I wanted to support her growth. The problem wasn't her ambition. It was how completely it began to consume everything else. She started working late. At first, it was just once in a while. Then it became routine. She'd tell me things like, "This project is high priority," or "We have a late strategy meeting." Soon, there were out-of-town trainings and off-site events, first every few months, then every other week. I tried to be supportive, but deep down, it hurt watching her drift further from home. When she was home, she was exhausted. Conversations became short, mostly about chores, bills, or errands. The warmth faded. The intimacy, not just physical, but emotional closeness, started to vanish. The laughter, the small jokes, the casual, "How was your day?" that used to mean so much, all was gone. I felt like a background character in my own marriage. It was hard to bring it up without feeling like I was being selfish. She was chasing success, and I knew how important that was to her. So I swallowed my frustration and told myself it was just a phase. But living under the same roof with someone who no longer talks to you like they used to is a lonely experience. Arguments started to escalate faster than before. And when things got heated, Angela would shut down, refusing to talk for days, sometimes an entire week. During those silent stretches, she was glued to her phone, smiling faintly at her screen, quickly locking it or closing apps when I came near. When I asked, she'd accuse me of being paranoid or controlling, which only started another cycle of silence. We hadn't always been like this. There was a time when we could talk for hours about nothing. I felt the space between us growing, but nothing I did seemed to bridge the gap. Then one quiet evening, I was home alone. Angela had gone out again for what she said was a work event. I noticed her iPad on the couch and picked it up just to watch Netflix. Somehow, I ended up in her messages. I honestly don't even remember how, but once I saw what was there, I couldn't unsee it. Her iPad was synced with her phone. At first, I didn't know what I was looking at. Then I saw a familiar name. Her co-worker, someone she used to casually mention back when we were still close. I had never seen him as a threat, but the messages told a different story. They weren't just work-related chats. They were checking in on each other, planning meetups, even arranging hotels for weekend trips. One trip she claimed was a seminar in another state was actually a weekend getaway with him. I just sat there, stunned. All the late nights, the out-of-town trips, the way she avoided eye contact when she came home, it all made sense now. But I didn't confront her that night. I knew if I went in without enough proof, she'd flip it on me, deny everything, maybe even paint me as the villain. I closed the iPad and made a decision. I needed more evidence, and I needed a plan. I hired a private investigator and consulted a lawyer about divorce. Weeks later, the investigator delivered everything I needed, photos, videos, and reports confirming the affair. With everything in hand, I chose a calm evening to confront Angela. When she walked in, I asked her to sit down. I kept my voice steady and asked, "What's going on between you and your co-worker?" She stayed silent at first, then accused me of trying to control her. I didn't argue. I simply showed her the screenshots. Her face hardened. Instead of explaining, she accused me of invading her privacy and announced that our marriage was over, then told me to leave the house. I said nothing. The next day, I packed my things and walked out without a scene. I booked a hotel and started looking for a place to stay. A few days later, I filed for divorce. I also froze our joint accounts to protect myself financially. Angela tried to spin it like I was overreacting, but her cheating wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate, and it had destroyed everything we built. The divorce process took months. I followed my lawyer's advice carefully and made sure I wasn't cheated out of what I had contributed. Once the divorce was nearly finalized, I made my next move. I filed a lawsuit against her co-worker for alienation of affection. I wasn't just angry that he slept with my wife. I wanted him to face consequences for helping destroy my marriage. I waited until all legal matters between Angela and me were settled before filing, so it wouldn't interfere with the divorce. When the summons reached him, he panicked and tried to settle privately to avoid workplace consequences. I refused. Then Angela called me for the first time in months, pretending to want peace. She tried to convince me to drop the lawsuit, saying I was taking things too far. I told her clearly, "You don't get to decide how far I go. You made your choices. Now I make mine." Once the case became public, word spread. Their company launched an internal investigation. Both Angela and her co-worker were suspended and eventually fired for violating company policy. When the lawsuit verdict came, I won. I didn't celebrate like I'd won the lottery. The money wasn't the point. The point was accountability. When Angela found out she lost her job, she sent me a long, angry message blaming me for ruining her life. I didn't reply, because justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a quiet, cold reminder that actions have consequences. Looking back, it wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the slow death of our connection, the silence, the lies, being made to feel like a stranger in my own home. But I kept my head clear, even when my heart was breaking. I turned my pain into action. I let the truth speak louder than my anger ever could. In the end, justice was served. Her lover faced consequences, and she lost the very job she once used as an excuse to abandon our marriage. I don't feel guilty about any of it. Not anymore. Because when someone tries to break you and you rise from it stronger, there's no victory more powerful than that. Thank you for listening.